Okay, we're gonna get started. Welcome everyone. I'm gonna share my screen. Let's see. 3, 2, perfect. Welcome everyone to Winning Affordable Housing for Your Community, a workshop series. And this is workshop number two. I think workshop number one went really well. And this one, we were not going to focus as much as on the work that CP Planning is doing. We're going to focus more on, the types of successful housing initiatives. And we have two great guest speakers talking about that. We're going to talk a little bit about the finance piece, a little bit about the community land trust piece as well. For your information, my name is Tashawn. Thank you all for coming today and taking the time. I'm a senior community planner here at CP Planning. I've been here about 3 months now, so I guess I passed probation if I'm still here. Um, and I love the work that we do. I stepped away from planning for 2 years, and CP planning is really the reason I came back to it. Traditional planning necessarily wasn't a love of mine, but this community aspect and really trying to solve the affordable housing crisis, especially for racialized folks who a lot of them who look like me is really meaningful. And this is the reason I got into planning. I really got into planning because I grew up in a low income neighborhood and I really wanted to, change the environments or build people are products of their environment. And I really want to have an impact on the way in which those environments were built. So you can't go where you're going unless we acknowledge where we started. And so I want to do a land acknowledgement and acknowledge that we're on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Huron-Wendat, and Mississaugas of the Credit, who have been stewards of this land for generations. Toronto is part of the Dish with One Spoon Treaty, where these nations peacefully share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. In engaging with racialized communities around the displacement and land use across Southern Ontario, we must acknowledge and prioritize the presence and leadership of the many Indigenous groups who were first displaced from this land. We commit to prioritizing actions to support Indigenous communities throughout all aspects of our work. In addition to that, I really think it's important that we do an African ancestral acknowledgement as well, which says we acknowledge all treaty peoples, including those who came here as settlers, as migrants, either in this generation or in generation past. And those of us who came here involuntarily, particularly those brought to these lands as a result of the transatlantic slave trade and slavery. We pay tribute to those ancestors of African origin and descent. So to jump into what we are doing today, today's agenda is pretty jam-packed. I hope we finish at 8:30. If we go past 8:30, there's the opportunity from 8:30 to 9. It's not mandatory that you stay, but if you would like to, we are giving that time so that, if the presentations go that long or questions go that long or the networking goes that long, that everybody has, enough time to get the information that they need. So I'll go into an intro about CP planning, a little bit of housekeeping, and introduce the workshop. And then today we have an icebreaker as well about the I Love Community game. I love games, so we'll get right into that. And then we have our guest speakers. We have Marina and Kyle from Tapestry, and then we have Hanya from Toronto Chinatown Land Trust. And then we have a breakout session, which will be really cool and interesting, very different from last session. We didn't have that, so I'm really excited for that. And that will be led by Tapestry. And at the end, we'll have closing remarks. The survey is really important, so don't leave without doing the survey. And if you have any additional questions and networking opportunities, we'll have that at the end. Okay, so jump right into it. So housekeeping. Please mute your mic when you're not speaking. And if you are speaking, please turn on the video for better engagement. Also, this call is being recorded, so if you're here, you consented to that. And then if you have questions, please use the chat. I have Daniela moderating the chat, so there'll be somebody there moderating that and monitoring. If you want to speak, please raise your hand. We love reactions. It shows that you're listening, and it's really exciting as a speaker to get reactions. So you please use the heart or whatever you want to use for feedback. If you want to speak, like I said, please raise your hand and wait for your turn to be called. And the meeting will be about 90 minutes. So if I want to be mindful and be courteous of others who may want to speak. So the meeting duration is 90 minutes, but please be concise when you do have the mic and you are speaking. Daniela, I don't know if you put in the chat, I can't see it, but there are also instructions for guests who have called in, but I don't have them in front of me.
Yep, I've just added them in.
You just added them in. Perfect. Do we have any instructions that we want to share with that?
I know it's just for folks who are dialing in. You can press *6 to mute and unmute yourself, and then *9 to raise or lower your hand for those that are joining by phone.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Danielle, for that. Okay, so the workshop Lead to CP Planning, we were founded in 2017 with a vision of having a world with more joy where people are affirmed through a sense of community and belonging. And our mission really is to align for investment solutions that uphold the economic, social, and cultural rights of marginalized people so they have access to good housing, good jobs, and adequate standard of living and opportunities for cultural expression. So it's really about bringing a human rights approach back to planning because the economic considerations have taken over in a lot of cases. In a lot of places where we see, higher order transit projects such as LRTs and subways, we often see populations are displaced and people who made the very fabric of that community are forced to move away. And a lot of times, those are racialized individuals. So our work is really rooted in achieving zero displacement and ensuring that these folks have access to affordable housing, which is, I'm sure, why we are all here today. I won't talk too much about our roadmap project and the work CP Planning does, and if you want to connect about that at a later time, feel free to reach out. But today is really about our guests. And here is our wonderful, diverse team. Again, a lot of this wouldn't be possible without them. They are wonderful to work with, and we all work tirelessly to really change the landscape of what planning looks like here in Ontario and hopefully throughout the country.
Sorry, Tashawn.
Go ahead.
If you're showing your deck, we can't see anything.
Period?
No, we just see you. So just
This whole time?
yes. So just flagging that.
Oh, you've all been looking at me this whole time.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Let me see something. Oh, it didn't go through.
Okay, we can see now. Great.
I'm so sorry. You all have just been looking at me this whole time. Okay. So hold on. So I'll show this slide. So the mute, the stop video, the chat, and the reactions are there just in case you didn't know. And this is kind of our slide about CP Planning being the workshop lead. And this is our wonderful diverse team that I just spoke about. And yes, none of this would be possible without them. And they're absolutely lovely to work with. So the workshop series overview titled Winning Affordable Housing for Your Community. And I love the word win because that's really what we're trying to achieve is a win, a change here. And we have 5 dedicated workshops to providing residents with the tools and training to properly engage with major stakeholders involved in the development process for housing. And the goal of the series really is to build capacity and develop buy-in from key stakeholders such as decision makers, policymakers, and developers to achieve their goals around securing affordable housing units in their neighborhoods. And that is really what this workshop is about, providing the tools, the information, the connections, whatever it is that that we can do to support organizations or individuals that are interested in affordable housing. So here's our schedule of workshops. We are now workshop 2 on the 7th. Workshop 3 is on January 25th in the new year. And we have a series of 5 pending potentially a 6th one if necessary. And then today, workshop number 2, types of successful housing initiatives. And really we're going to look at, stakeholder identification and engagement, equipping participants with the skills to engage key figures such as champions, influential counselors, and supportive developers in affordable housing. And we're going to talk a little bit about social finance and the finance piece of affordable housing, which I'm sure a lot of you are also interested in. And we'll delve into the role of social finance and development projects, highlighting how local governance policies shape the involvement of stakeholders in affordable housing initiatives. So now to the icebreaker. So just to get a sense of who's here today, please share which community you're representing and one aspect that you want to share about the community or even a fun fact about it. And you can share that in the chat, or you can, yeah, share it in the chat if you'd like. Christina's here from Central West. Thank you for joining us. Do you have a fun fact about your community that you want to share, or one aspect that you want to share? Okay, we have Alexander from Toronto. And then we have Martha from the Southeast East region. George from Scarborough. No fun facts on top of my head. Shannon from Little Jamaica. And favorite thing, Shannon, is the diversity of food and people. We all love a neighborhood with great people and great food. I agree. South Central Etobicoke. The people, the lake, love the lake. I live by the lake myself. The food, I could go on. We love someone who really loves their neighborhood. I love that. And then Lindsay from Simcoe region, welcome. Sandra from Brampton. The fun fact is beautiful homes. Yes, super true. I used to live in Brampton, so I agree. Anyone else want to share anything cool? Southwest region based in London. Okay, I'll give another 30 seconds or so, and then we can jump right into our guests. Oh, everyone got excited when I said 30 seconds. Ovco, the home of the awesome Afro-Caribbean farmers market, the best farmers market. I have to go. So I love that. Housing Navigator with Development Services Ontario for Toronto. And we have Oakwood Vaughan Community. Fun fact, we have a high portion of seniors living alone in our area. Not sure that's fun, but maybe. Well, depends how you look at it. It depends on the senior. Elaine from DC. Nice people. Wow. Oh, Eleni from DC, sorry. Wow. Okay. So there's a lot of people in the room from a lot of different places who have a lot of interesting facts about the community. So let's jump right into it. So our first guest speaker is Hania Cheng. Hania has an inter-arts and performance practice based out of their studio in Chinatown Center. At the ripples of relationships and reciprocity, art is the common ground on which they share stories, placemaker, and forage for the sparkle that exists in the greater unknown of our daily lives. Love that. They are the co-chair of the Toronto Chinatown Community Land Trust. Please, Hania, take over. Thank you for joining us, and I'm really excited for what you're going to share with us today. So let me stop sharing and give you a chance to jump in.
Hi, everyone. That was a lovely introduction. Thank you to CP Planning and the CP Planning team. So amazing to be in community with y'all and seeing you do such amazing work. Love to see all the icebreaker and everyone tuning in. It's super cool. I love that. I'm just going to share my screen. Give me a second.
You remember how?
I know. I'm like, okay. You see my screen?
Yes.
But you don't see my speaker notes.
No, not at this
All
time.
right. Okay. So, hi everyone. I'm Hanya. I'm the co-chair of the Toronto Chinatown Land Trust. So our project operates on the knowledge that Chinatown is situated on stolen Indigenous land. The main artery of Chinatown exists on Ishpedina between College and Sullivan, which is an Ojibwe word meaning a sudden rise in the land, which of course, if you go north on Spadina, it like does that very suddenly. This work concerns specifically the collective ownership of land that we now recognize as property. Therefore, we are an explicitly anti-colonial project constantly looking for ways to intervene in real estate to erode power away from the real estate state and align ourselves with the Indigenous-led land back movement. The way we govern our work aims to respect existing models, exemplified by the dish with one spoon wampum belt, an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe nations around the Great Lakes to peacefully share and care for the resources. Important to point out as we dive deeper that there is always going to be an active, ongoing tension between imagining other worlds, which includes free, prior, and informed consent of all Indigenous peoples to their land, free Palestine, and our current reality, which is the predatory, private, property capitalist system that we are confined within. Essentially, it's like, this isn't where we want to be, but this is what we can do right now. So my name is Hanya. I'm a queer artist and cultural worker. I co-founded an artist-run gallery in Chinatown Center, which is a mall south of Spadina. I also have a separate studio space in the mall. Long story short, I'm obsessed with this mall in Chinatown. She is my artistic muse. Chinatown is where I grew up and now work. It's where I go for culturally competent services. It's a place that felt like the closest thing to home when my parents immigrated in the 90s. So, how did an artist like me become the co-chair of the Toronto Chinatown Land Trust? Well, like everyone here, I care a lot about my neighborhood. I'm not a planner. I'm just a person who's been forced into the housing crisis like everyone else. And now, out of necessity, I have to learn about planning policies and how ridiculously complicated and expensive land acquisition is. So community land trusts, we're all about community knowledge, wealth, and ownership. So would someone like to define, there's no wrong answers. If someone would like to speak or sound off in the comments, what is a community land trust? I can't see the comment box. If someone would just like to unmute, I also can't see if anyone's raising their hand either. It's the presentation view. Standria?
Yeah, that's me. Community land trust, I'm obviously guessing, but funds would place in a trust on behalf of the community, that they're situated on, something like that. I don't know.
Yeah,
So
it's. Oh, sorry.
yeah, so that's what I'm thinking. Some sort of community united trust fund available for their land.
Yeah, exactly. It's like very self-explanatory. It's community-owned land. So CLTs grew out of the US civil rights movement. The first CLT was New Communities, a land trust and farm collective founded by approximately a dozen Black farmers in 1969 in response to loss of Black-owned land. So we can take time to read what's on the screen. Community land trust is only one tool at our disposal and is one piece of the pie. There are many other forms of nonprofit housing. I'm fortunate enough to live in the Franco Lambert neighborhood, which is like North Christie and DuPont train tracks. And in my neighborhood, there's Toronto Community Housing. I live within 4 different cooperative housings. There's Castleview, which is a city-owned long-term care home. And then there's also Christie Gardens, which is like a nonprofit long-term care home as well. Funnily enough, I also organize in the neighborhood I live in with Franco Lambert Outreach Committee, my resident community group. And one of our core members is Gabby, who is on CP Planning's team and is on mat leave. So it's a small world. And housing security is only the start. Our movement does not end here. So does anyone want to sound off in the comments or raise their hand on what they think community control means? I hope the comments are really sounding off. I can't tell. Sandra, you still have a legacy hand. Do you want to answer a second time?
Oh, I didn't realize. Sure. So community control means the control of the community by the economics, private sector. That's what I'm, thinking.
Yes, thank you, Sandra. You get it. It's in the words, Community control is community ownership and governance of local assets. And this definition was adapted into the MIT Collab report on CLTs. So this idea and definition is very expansive, right? Because the definition of community is open to each local context. But the idea is to really drive home for organizers that true control is not some consultation window dressing process. It's or informing a plan that doesn't have a material reciprocation. So community is who you define it as, and it's different depending on what neighborhood you're in, the histories, who you're organizing with, who your neighbors are. And for Chinatown, for example, like not everyone who has a history and a place in Chinatown necessarily works or lives in Chinatown anymore. So our Chinatown community includes the person who drives in from Ajax 2 hours to get groceries that he can only get in our downtown Chinatown. So I'm just going to do a quick brief of Toronto Land Trust.
Sorry, Hania. It's Daniela. There's a note in the chat box that the screen appears to be cropped off on the right side.
Oh.
So we're missing some of the text. Yep, there it is. There we go. It's better now.
Thank you.
Great, thanks.
I hope it wasn't cutting off too much. So a lot of land trusts in Toronto are siblings. It's a lot of the same people sharing resources and skills, like this training webinar series. So Parkdale Neighborhood Land Trust is like our eldest sister. They kind of started it all. They successfully lobbied the city for MIRA, which is a multi-unit residential acquisition program in 2018. And then PNLT helped create the Kensington Market Community Land Trust, which used the MIRA program to acquire 54 to 56 Kensington Avenue in 2021. And then both Parkdale and Kensington kind of helped us birth Chinatown Land Trust. And we had our first annual general meeting this summer. And now the three of us are in talks of kind of helping create an Indigenous Land Trust. And most recently in October, there was the inaugural summit of Canadian Network of Community Land Trusts, which is held in Toronto, which is kind of setting itself up to be like a resource group, similar to CP planning, but also different, to just support nonprofit housing initiatives and projects and resident community-led groups. So let me tell you about our origin story, because that's always fun. So Friends of Chinatown is a grassroots group fighting for housing, economic, and racial justice in Chinatown. It was created in 2019 in response to a site fight at 315 to 325 Spadina, which is a condo project which was slated to replace an entire block. And since then, we've worked on a lot of different things. We do caseworks, workshops, coalition building with other groups, attending rallies together, fighting for migrant and worker rights. We've done mutual aid food tables. And we also quickly found out through that we couldn't meet the need of the community as just a small grassroots volunteer run group. And at the time of COVID and our neighborhood was severely under-vaxxed. So as a group, we were able to translate documents, do the outreach that the city couldn't do, and we vaxxed 5,000 residents and workers in our neighborhood. And it was had a very low vaccine rate, and we were able to push it up pretty high. We support uninsured members with fundraisers and mutual aid. And so from Friends of Chinatown, Toronto, it's very grassroots and it remains grassroots. We don't take any government funding. It is purposely grassroots. But then we realized that we needed also to incorporate as a nonprofit to do other things that was part of our mission. And so Fox saw the land trust as a proactive strategy in the fight for housing affordability. And in 2021, Community Power for Anti-Displacement, an Inclusive Future for Downtown Chinatown was a report created in partnership with Friends of Chinatown to research the patterns of neighborhood change. Essentially, it recommended that we start a land trust. So then we had a working group for like 2 years, and then we incorporated this Lunar New Year's as a separate entity, and we had our first AGM at Sky Dragon. Yes, at Sky Dragon in July. And our city councilor and mayor was there, soon to be mayor at the time. And it was very, very fulfilling, and it was full of community, and it was beautiful. And so what catalyzed Friends of Chinatown and the Land Trust was Bright Pearl. So it used to be a Jewish lyceum for community organizing and labor rights organizing. And then it was inherited by the Chinese community as a community hub where people gathered for banquet meals and got married. And then it became this like cursed box for 3 years. And it has since then been leased by Scott Mission, which is like a Christian ministry that addresses food insecurity and serves underhoused people. I did hear a rumor like going around that Scott Mission tried to purchase the building, but the landlord didn't let them. I don't know, that might just be a rumor. So this is a photo of us from 5 years ago, canvassing in front of Bright Pearl. And we were shaming them for art washing because they put on this like loosely based art show disguised as essentially a real estate ad to sell this cursed box. And then the picture beside that is us in June of 2019 as part of a coast-to-coast Chinatowns Against Displacement Week of Action, which included Seattle, LA, Philadelphia, New York, Montreal, Toronto, San Francisco, and Boston. So for our action in Toronto, we decided to do a procession in Chinatown and spend our afternoon building an anti-displacement garden together in the courtyard of Chinatown Center, the mall that I'm obsessed with. And as you can see, it was like this pile of rubble for 7 years because of like a feng shui dispute amongst the mall owners. And we were able to turn it back into a functioning community space and garden. This was at our ribbon cutting. This garden has since become a site of so much organizing, and relationships are built at the speed of trust, and social change happens at the speed of relationships. So all this in between time, the dinners, the mingling, the mahjong, the garden, the music, is critical. It's critical work. And so I just want to take a second to highlight the importance of, I guess, what we would call like soft organizing. You know, in the process of building and maintaining this garden, we got to know each other as people first and built that trust, that foundation of trust, so that when the time came for our major site fight at 315 and 325 Spadina, we were ready. We were ready to go. So now let me tell you about our site fight. So this was our site fight. I don't know if people in Toronto who are in Toronto will know this is the iconic Rolsan building, which is like our most prized, like one of our most prized like dim sum restaurants in the neighborhood. And this was the building that Rolsan is in. And so the city put up this untranslated sign, and we were like, that's stupid. So we did this art action, and we did like a parody sign. We translated it. We put the consultation details in it, and We packed this obscure room at U of T, which was so inaccessible. We demanded for cultural competence. We advocated for working class workers and residents of Chinatown. And they offered us ginkgo trees and Asian style murals as a response. COVID made everything worse because then the consultation process was taken online. We couldn't see each other on WebEx. We couldn't talk to each other on WebEx. So we had a separate Zoom room where we could all talk and see each other while we were simultaneously in the city's WebEx room. And then we decided to run a campaign to demand for 100% rent geared to income affordable housing at this site. That's me. I have no hair in that photo. It's gone. And sadly, it was approved in 2021. Only 22 out of the 219 units will be quote unquote affordable, which is and affordable as in it'll be 80% market rate, which is not affordable. And it's only going to be for 40 years. It was a very disappointing outcome. We like fought so hard and we got such a small concession, which inspired us to do this, to do that report, to be like, how can we be more responsive instead of reactive? And from now on, like it's still, as you can see, in construction mode. We will continue to pressure both the developers, Podium and Reichman, and the city until this building eventually becomes 100% rent geared to income affordable housing in perpetuity. Recently at the board, we've been dreaming of our full circle moment when the city will expropriate this land and it will become part of the Toronto Chinatown Land Trust. This is not our first time fighting for Chinatown, and it won't be our last. Chinatown was originally displaced from the ward to build what is now City Hall. Chinatown was designed as an ethnic enclave through systematically racist policies. And to this day, there is no specific Chinatown planning policy. There is no city-approved boundary of what Chinatown is. They tried to shove a highway through Spadina in the 70s. And after Chinese people, in the late 1800s, mostly men built the colonial infrastructure, also known as CP Rail, and were abandoned. They were abandoned in Chinatown and they couldn't vote. They had to pay head taxes. They couldn't bring their families over. And what did they do against and despite all odds? They took care of each other. Community ownership is not new or experimental in any way when it comes to Chinatown. The original community land trusts have been our clan associations and mutual aid groups. They said, hey, even if we're not related, if we have the same last name, let's create a chosen family and home for ourselves. Let's lend each other money to start businesses. Let's protect and house each other and buy land together. So the TCLT, we're not acquiring a property portfolio from scratch. We are succession planning for the dense ecosystem of community ownership non-for-profits that already currently exist. I love this quote. I took it from Shi Yi's slides. Land value fictitiously captures the social and cultural work that communities have put in to make a place what it is. And the real estate system says that you can sell that to someone to experience this culture that they did not create. So recently, we had like a board retreat where we all groaned in pain at our managing director, Chi Yi Tam, describing how acquisition works and how truly fucked up the real estate system is. But before we went into this, kind of disappointing training, in my opinion, she asked us, without having money involved, what would be your biggest dream property? Like dream as big as you can. What would it be? And my answer was that we can do the long-term work to change the culture from its root, to convince our neighbors that the cultural value and the lasting legacy of Chinatown is more valuable than the speculative real estate money of the land, you know? And if we do that, if we do this long-term work, property owners will naturally choose to redistribute their properties to our land trust to steward Chinatown's communal wealth in order to maintain Chinatown's intergenerational legacy of mutual aid and affordability. So I think community ownership offers us a glimpse into the next world. The realization that community ownership offers you, goes back to what, oh wait, sorry, wrong notes. It offers a glimpse into the next world, And an elder in the indigenous community, Catherine Martin, says, what if we didn't buy and sell, but instead shared? And so that is what I have to offer. And I'm going to stop sharing now for questions. Feel free to put some questions in the chat. Or if you want to unmute.
This is Sandria here. Question, well, thank you for your presentation. Actually, it was well done. And I just want to get the overall gist of land trust. So are you saying that the new way of proceeding ahead to keep generational wealth and to keep, the status of Chinatown would be for residents to, I guess, pass on rather than sell their home, pass it on to, friends and family, or who is it passed on to so that it's kept there? I guess that's the question.
So I think that's a good question. I think I really framed within the Chinatown Land Trust because we have these legacies. We already have these legacy nonprofit owned buildings that could be stewarded to the land trust. Like that connection makes more sense. But in terms of like a private property, like if it's someone's house, like sometimes that is like people's like nesting egg. Like we do have to operate in the real estate system. And so I think it really depends on the neighborhood, but I think the idea is a land trust is a nonprofit tool for collective ownership and community control. If that helps answer your question.
Yeah. So you're talking about, and I get the idea of private ownership because it's private, it is the what so, but as organized non-for-profit buildings that have been used within Chinatown for the greater good, to have it stay in the community and build on over the years.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, I'm listening.
Did you finish? Sorry.
Yeah, I did. I'm just trying to understand a little bit further. You explained it very well, just what you just said previously, in that it's like, the land is the ownership of, it's a nonprofit organization where these buildings that are community owned get passed on or be within the construct of the land trust.
Yeah, it's like, how do we keep it community owned? And and we're still doing this research. Like we're not sure, like we're building these relationships. Each family association is different too. But we want to just like maintain it as community owned. And I think in the dreamiest dream world, people would just redistribute their property and not have it for profit. And we could just house each other and like share instead of like selling and buying. But
Right. Okay. Got it. Great.
There is a question from George as well in the chat. How was the land trust started or formed for Hania?
So thank you, Danielle and George. Land trusts are essentially just at its like skeleton an incorporated non-for-profit. So like anyone can do that. Any group of people, if you have $75, you pay the thing. But I think it really depends on like the neighborhood. Like each neighborhood, especially like Parkdale, Kensington, Chinatown, they're all siblings, but they also have very like distinct histories and distinct working class like stories and people coming together to fight and protect each other. So yeah, for Chinatown, we like came out of Fox, and then we were like, wait a minute, this is the best way to protect what we have and our community housing. Let's do this. And so now currently we're in the phase of like acquiring property. And then also something we think about a lot is like really tangible land back in like indigenous like solidarity. So like maybe we're experimenting with like voluntarily paying property tax to the nations, on the land that we're operating under. Or like, how do we make sure that 5 generations from now, the Chinatown Land Trust isn't just obsessed with property and they sell all the land or something. So there's a lot of like talking around like, how do we, I guess it is like, I think it does go back to another indigenous teaching of like, how do we build this land trust for 7 generations into the future? How do we think and plan 7 generations ahead? Yes, and Nicholas shared an amazing resource about like the more like nitty-gritty logistics of starting a land trust. And like I would recommend the Canadian Network of Community Land Trusts. Maybe I'll drop the website real quick. Is an amazing resource. Let me see.
Okay. Thank you so much, Hanya. That was really great. I can see like a lot of great reactions in the chat and just really demonstrating the importance of community and community coming together. I absolutely loved your presentation. So thank you so much. There's no more questions. If you have a question, you can park it to the end, maybe write it down so you're not thinking about it the whole time and not listening anymore. And then I'll share my screen really quickly and then we'll jump into the next one.
Yeah, thanks so much everyone for listening and for being here and for wanting to have community control in your neighborhood and to want to organize with your neighbors and the people you care about. Thank you. And CP Planning, thank you for having me. Yay.
No, thank you, Hanya. Okay, so our next speakers. So now we have Tapestry Community Capital. We have Kyle and Marina. Kyle supports business development at Tapestry. He works with Ryan to onboard new clients and identify growth opportunities. Kyle also oversees the Impact Measurement Fund at Tapestry. Since graduating from York University with a degree in finance, he's held various roles in the social impact sector, including strategy, investments, fundraising, impact measurement, and community engagement. In his free time, Kyle enjoys skateboarding along the waterfront trail, testing out new recipes, and playing table tennis at the community center. Kyle's a really fun person, it sounds like. Wow, Kyle, got to hang out with you. And then we have Marina. Marina comes to Tapestry as a campaign coordinator with a wide range of professional experience in client services, communications, and marketing in the music industry, politics, and journalism. She has been called the queen of structured fun and strongly believes that every party has a good plan. In her personal life, Marina enjoys yoga, cooking, and the part of going camping where she gets to write an email to all participants with a detailed plan and a shared Google Sheet. We all need a friend like Marina. So welcome to you both. I will stop sharing and I'm sure we're all really excited to hear your presentation. So let me jump off and hand it over to Kyle and Marina. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, everyone. I'm just going to share my, oh, I need permission to share my screen.
Oh, sorry, I might have just given it to Ka. I'm sorry. You should have it now.
Okay. Alrighty, can everybody see my screen okay? Alrighty, so I'll get started here, and then I'll pass it off to my colleague Kyle eventually. I'm Marina. I'm a campaign coordinator at Tapestry. Hanya talked about a little bit about how frustrating it can be to have to operate within the real world and get money to spend on the crazy prices that property is. So I'm going to tell you a little bit how we at Tapestry think we can solve that problem. So the challenge, there's nonprofits, charities, and co-ops that want to acquire assets to scale their impact, but they need access to capital. All those land trusts that Hanya just talked about are perfect examples of them. And we also are working with a couple of land trusts ourselves. And then the other part of the challenge is that individuals and institutions want to invest their money in positive ways, but they need investment products available to do this. As we know, Canadians seem to be addicted to investing in real estate. And I'm always saying, why can't we trick people into investing in affordable housing? And maybe you don't get the same returns, but you're doing a good thing. So the solution at Tapestry that we have come up with and that we work with our clients to implement is community investors make a fair return by investing in projects they believe in, such as a community land trust. Nonprofits and co-ops own assets that allow them to scale their impact. So they take the money from the investors and they buy a building, which they then rent out at affordable prices and pay back their investors, and then continue to buy more and more so that they can make things more and more affordable and eventually change the system. And then communities are better served with access to the spaces and services they need, such as affordable housing. So at Tapestry, we're a nonprofit with the mission of making community investment accessible to social purpose organizations across Canada. So we guide our clients through every step of the way to successfully raise and manage community bonds. And we have helped our clients raise over $100 million from more than 4,000 community investors. And this has worked in all kinds of industries, not just housing, which we're doing a lot of work with now, but the arts as well, renewable energy, all kinds of things. This little picture here actually is of the bricks at the Center for Social Innovation, I believe, which has worked with Tapestry and is funded with community bonds. And people who invested got their names on those bricks. So what are community bonds? I love this little graphic that I've got a magnet of it on my fridge, actually. So a community member buys a bond. Number two, the nonprofit, co-op, or charity finances their project with the money from that bond. Then over time, they repay their investors, usually with a little bit of interest as well. And then finally, investors have the option to reinvest either in the same project, or maybe the original organization doesn't need the money anymore and they go and invest in another new project. And it can just go around and around like that until we change the world and don't have to live in our current reality anymore, hopefully. So they're a proven social finance tool that are exclusively used by not-for-profits, charities, and co-ops. There's a little exclusion in the law that allows this. It's issued in the name of the organization. It is an interest-bearing loan from your community. And one of the great things is that, yes, it's investment. Yes, there's interest, but you're keeping the wealth within your community. So it's like regular people can invest like as little as $500 or $1,000 and make a little bit of money back while supporting their community. And it typically takes up about 10 to 50% of your total project financing, and it can be in some cases held in an RRSP or TFSA. So why community bonds? They're flexible. So the organization sets the terms. So whatever works for you in your community, you can set term lengths, interest rates, whether it's RRSP, TFSA eligible, all of those things you can set yourself rather than going to a bank and having them control everything. They're inclusive, so both individuals and institutions can invest. So you can get big money from guilty corporations, but also, like I said, just a regular person can invest $500 or $1,000, and it's really nice for keeping the wealth in your community. It's engaging, so it creates a powerful pride of ownership. People get on board with your project if they're invested in it, and so it's great for getting community support for and fighting NIMBYism for housing projects in particular, because if the person who your project is in their backyard, if they're invested in it, they're gonna turn into a YIMBY. They're not going to be an IMBY. It's efficient. So it's faster than traditional donation campaigns. You know, you're going to get your money faster because people know that they're going to get their money back, and it's easier for them to part with their money that way. It's in demand. Every campaign is oversubscribed. There's lots of people, individuals and foundations that are desperately looking for impact investment opportunities now, because they don't want to be invested in things like fossil fuels or real estate investment trusts or other things that are bad for our society anymore. But there's just not enough impact investment opportunities out there for them. And then finally, it's scalable for sustainably financing for growth. So many of our campaigns have reinvestment campaigns once their bonds have matured, and then they aren't gonna, of course, like just take 100% reinvestment because they're slowly paying off their principal, but we have seen about 60 to 70% as the reinvestment rate. And so then you can go and do the next project and the next project and the next project as you grow your capacity. So I believe now I'm going to pass it off to Kyle. Go for it, Kyle. Oh, wait, no, I think I'm supposed to do this. Sorry.
Yeah, you can do that one.
So are they a good fit? A few questions to ask yourself or your organization before you get into community bonds. Is your project meaningful to your community? You need to have buy-in from your community for this to work. They're giving you their hard-earned money, and they want to make their community a better place. So you have to be on the same page there. Are you going to raise between $500,000 and $5 million or even more, just to make sure that it makes sense for you money-wise, that you're not spending too much money on your money? Do you have a sustainable revenue model to repay your investors? Because of course it's a bond, it's not a donation. So you are going to have to pay them back both interest and their principal eventually. And does your organization have a network of supporters? Of course, this is something that you can build, but and so it doesn't mean no forever if you don't currently have a network of supporters, but once you have started building that network, that's the best time to start raising money. And now for real, I'm going to pass it over to Kyle.
Thanks, Marina. So while there is that national securities exemption, which enables social purpose organizations to issue community bonds, it's still a really difficult process to navigate. And this is really where Tapestry steps in, because we provide end-to-end support. We have a standardized process for people for organizations looking to raise community investment that we take every issuer through. We also have the people, like our campaigns team, which Marina is a part of, that sticks by you every step of the way to guide you through the capital campaign. We also have the platform to manage and administer bond investments called Atticus. And to add, we also do a lot of policy and advocacy work in hopes of getting government support for community investment. Next slide. So this is the process that we take every issuer through. The first is often planning and feasibility, which is a 2-month process that involves developing a financial model as well as conducting investor consultations. And the financial model will tell us whether an organization can afford to repay investors over time, and the investor consultations will help determine the appetite for community bonds within a given region. Once we've completed planning feasibility, we move on to structuring, which is a 3-month process. And this is really where a lot of the back-end setup work happens. Tapestry will support with the offering statement development, the sales and marketing strategy, the legal review, and the infrastructure setup on Atticus. And then in the third phase, when your campaign goes public, our campaigns team will support you every step of the way in terms of training you to sell these bonds to your community and connecting your organization with PR agencies who can really put the word out on this investment opportunity. 6 months is typical for the length of a raise, but we've seen shorter and longer depending on how much your organization is looking to raise and your existing base of supporters. And in the final phase, once you've raised all the money, we will manage the bonds for the life of the investment. We handle all interest disbursements, the T5 tax slips, the maturity events, so you don't have to worry about any of that. Next slide. So now I'll be going over a case study about Places for People, a rural affordable housing charity that raised $850,000 to refinance 12 affordable housing units. And while we are focused on scaling up with larger providers, it's always interesting to see a small but mighty team tackle a capital campaign in the way that Places for People did. They're located in the second poorest county of Ontario, and there's a clear dichotomy between the rather affluent seasonal visitors and the year-round permanent residents. And the reality is many essential workers do not have a stable place to live due to a lack of opportunity and rapid population growth. And this is why Places for People is really determined to creating new, sustainable, affordable housing to support those who need it most. Next slide. So they turned to Tapestry for help, and in June of this year, Places for People launched their bond campaign with a goal of $850,000. And excitingly, within a mere 10 weeks, they exceeded their campaign goal and garnered support from 79 local investors. And this goes to show the true power of community. Although the odds were stacked against their favor, with a poor rural community supporter base, their cause resonated with many people beyond the region and had overwhelming support from other neighborhoods as well. And interestingly, the post-campaign survey reveals that almost all would reinvest in their future affordable housing projects. And then I think on another note about them is that I actually recently came back from their end of campaign celebration event, which happened last night. So a few of us from Tapestry drove up to Haliburton, which is about 2.5 to 3 hours north of Toronto. And they had this event to host their bondholders, so their investors, and did a bunch of AGM updates. And it was really great to see because once, you always deal with these investors either over the phone or either virtually or even through community events. So having them all in one area to just engage and really celebrate this accomplishment was really special. And that's what we're trying to do with the other organizations we're working with as well. Next slide. So in this next case study, I'll be going over Propolis Housing Cooperative, and they are based in Kamloops, BC, and they wish to develop net zero affordable housing. And I actually co-presented on a panel at the BC Nonprofit Housing Association with Lindsay Harris, the president at Propolis. And this is just another example of how we really try to spotlight and sponsor events to help the organizations we work with build their brand and market their campaign. But in a nutshell, Propolis launched a $1.1 million campaign in May of 2023 and are very close to achieving their raise goal. And the proceeds will be used to purchase a parcel of land, and they plan to demolish the existing property and construct their net zero building. And in addition to residential units, there will also be a commercial space, which will potentially be a theater, and there will also be a daycare center. And if you're wondering why they're taking a little longer than Place for People, it's because they're really brand new. They very recently incorporated. So I always like to emphasize, when you have a very strong community and you already know all the groups that would support you financially, it's a lot easier to reach out and instead of building new network of community of supporters, which is what Propolis is doing. But they are very close to their 1.1 million goal. I think they're close to about $900,000 right now. So it's pretty close to wrapping up as well. Next slide. So this is a stakeholder map for Propolis. And as we help these organizations visualize what their bond campaign might look like, it's really important to understand who the key stakeholders are and how those relationships can be leveraged in your favor during your community bond campaign. And as you can see from this map, Propolis has identified the arts community, other nonprofits, businesses, the Kamloops community, as well as the government as the key groups for their bond campaign, which further branches out into specific stakeholders. And this stakeholder mapping activity is something that we'll do with you shortly after our Q&A session. And remember, this exercise is not to just list the possible investors of your campaign, but also list the organizations or government bodies that you could potentially receive land or buildings from, the groups that could really help you spread the word about the campaign, the potential organizations you can collaborate with, because both of your organizations might have a similar mission, and so on. And it doesn't mean that these organizations can't also invest later on. Next slide. So Places for People and Propolis are just two examples I presented, but we are working with 4 other affordable housing organizations as a part of our CMHC Investing in Housing program. These include Indwell, Redwood Park Communities, Kensington Market Community Land Trust, and Ottawa Community Land Trust. And most, if not all, of these will be launching their campaign in the first quarter of 2024, which is very exciting. Next slide. So a near-term goal for us is to really scale up our investing in housing program, given the large amount of interest we've gotten from affordable housing organizations. And we hope to do this with the continued support of the CMHC and other funders. We are also currently seeking expressions of interest from organizations that wish to unlock capital within the next 8 to 12 months. And to be eligible, you must be a nonprofit, charitable, or cooperative affordable housing organization, and your project must meet CMHC's definition of affordability, of course. And so if you are a housing provider looking to raise capital for projects, feel free to email me at kyle@tapestrycapital.ca to schedule an initial discovery call. Next slide. So that's it. Thank you for your time, and I'll open it up for a Q&A before we jump into our stakeholder mapping activity.
Kyle, there is one question in the chat from Mary. Does Propolis know how much they need to develop, so the full amount that they require for development?
Yeah, so they actually did an interview with Bloomberg, and I believe they said 15 million was the total amount. Is that right, Marina? Can you confirm?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. I can get the link for that Bloomberg BNN interview that they did the other day. But yeah, it's 1.1 million for the initial property purchase, and then the rest of it is going to come, but they have other plans. It's all in their business plan in the coming years.
Yeah, and they plan to, for the, obviously the 1.1 just secures them the land, but for the construction costs, they are going to need to apply for funding from the CMHC as well. They're not going to raise 15 million in community bonds. They could, but it's all about stacking your capital and looking at what makes the most sense for your project. Someone's asking, will we be sharing these slides? Sure. Yeah, we can send this. Right, it would be better to. maybe send this to CP Planning and then they can circulate it afterwards?
Yeah, we can do that. Also, this meeting's recorded and will be posted on our website. So if you just want to watch it and rewatch everything that was said in addition to the slides, we can do that as well.
Yeah.
And Sandria has her hand raised.
This is very interesting. So I have a couple of questions. So first of all, you have a land trust or a community of people who are really interested in, affordable housing. So you form this organization of people. Obviously they don't have the capital, and I guess a lot of people don't have those networks to get in touch with investors. Do you guys do that? Or, they come to you with this idea of wanting to build something, and, then what happens? You guys help them in their campaign and set them up and organize where they go out in the community and earn, get these investors on board. And then what happens when the project is built? Like, how is money earned, and and what happens after that? Like, it's a lot of
yeah, all great questions. So Tapestry does act like a consultant and advisor. So we do not have the exempt market dealer status, and essentially what that means is we can't actually go out to members of your community and say, hey, please invest in this bond, or present them with that opportunity. Obviously, what we can do is help, is train your team and also connect you with PR agencies to really get the word out on your community bond campaign. But us physically, we can't just I guess reach out to the 4,000 emails that we have in our database and say, hey, please invest in this. We can't actually engage in any securities trading because we don't have a custom exemption. So we're more of the consultant that kind of holds your hand every step of the way through this capital campaign. And once the project is built, whether it's an acquisition or a new build, most of the revenue will probably be coming from the rental income, and then there's also government subsidies when you're working in affordable housing. So that's generally the revenue model piece of it, of how you might pay back investors over time. And it's also not just one project that you're relying on to pay back all of your investors. As an organization, or especially when you get a few properties in your portfolio as an organization, you probably have other assets you can leverage and other revenue streams as well. So that's what we really try to assess before taking on a project.
And I'll just
go ahead.
Sorry. I'll just add, and so while Tapestry can't introduce you to investors necessarily, we do have all these processes and best practices in place that have been proven, I think, to make potential investors very confident in investing in you. We do a whole offering statement package. We do a marketing and sales plan for you. And I'll also just add, so if you remember the slide that was the checklist of things to ask yourself before going to start a community bond campaign, you will have wanted to start, you will have wanted to have begun creating a community and getting involved in your community. So you have people to go to with all of these materials to make them confident in investing in you, and also have a plan for revenue as well.
Okay. And so two things. What is the turnaround time for investors to get their money back? And what's the cost for Tapestry involvement in such a project?
Yeah. So the turnaround time for investors, those are the bond terms that you set. So, community bonds are flexible in that you set the interest rates, the repayment terms, the bond duration. So you can set a 3-year, 5-year, or 7-year bond. Generally, there's 3 series of bonds. It's not just one bond that investors
You can even have a 15-year bond if that's what works with your community and your financial model.
Yeah. So it really depends. So you're able, if this is a longer project, then what we've been recommending, just because of this economy and fluctuating interest rates, is to keep most of them within that 3 to 7 year mark, and then do a reinvestment campaign afterwards if you need access to more capital. Because doing a 10 to 15 year bond right now might not be as attractive, but again, if there are enough people in your community, when you do those investor consultations and they say, hey, we don't mind lending you this money for 15 years, more power to you, and you can actually have a series as 15 years, but we've seen the most success with 3 to 7 usually. And then our fees, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, before you get into fees, I'll just add, like, that's why people choose community bonds over like a bank loan, because they get to set the terms themselves. So what is being offered by the bank might not work within your financial model, but if you have a community that's willing to support you with slightly different terms, and that works in your financial model, all of a sudden you can get your project done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then our fees, so there are basically two aspects of our fees. The first one is setting everything up. So that includes the planning feasibility, the structuring, as well as actually doing the capital campaign. So the raise, when I highlighted in our process. And then there's also the ongoing management of the bonds. So when we handle your interest disbursements, your T5 tax slips, and your maturity events, there's a cost to that as well. And we generally charge $80 to $120 as our per hour, as our nonprofit consulting rate. But I can like, if you want to have a chat for later on, I can give you some hard figures in terms of what, because it's always different. There's no like fixed price that I can quote for one specific organization. Like, it always depends. One organization needs our support and really needs us to handhold, then it's going to be more costly because it's more time intensive. If it's a more established organization and they've done fundraising campaigns previously and they have the capacity to take on more work, we can be more light touch and it'll be less costly. So you can
also raise to cover the costs. So you can just like tack on however much Tapestry is going to charge to your raise goal. And you can also, of course, use grants. Many of our clients apply for grant funding to pay for us. Yeah.
And places where people, like, they paid $0. All of the funds were covered from these, from either IRP, which is the investment readiness program funding, or another source. So yeah, you can generally get the cost subsidized, and also as a part of that initial planning, as a part of that investing in housing program with the CMHC, we've been able to subsidize the cost and basically cover the cost of planning feasibility and structure a flexible payment plan for them. So, and we understand, we're also a nonprofit. We work with other smaller nonprofits. We understand that cash flows can be tight, so we can definitely work something, find a workaround for payment.
Thank you, Kyle and Marina. I'm seeing one last question from Shelley, and also there's some just commentary from Mary about Ottawa community housing, what their, I guess in terms of what's needed, the grant funds needed per door in order to get to just 95% of AMR. But Shelley, feel free to unmute and ask your question.
Hi, so I'm not a not-for-profit, but we would be partnering with a not-for-profit. That's our goal, because we have property, and on it we want to offer affordable housing on it. But yeah, we're not necessarily a not-for-profit. So how would you work with that if we had a partner that was, like, we're looking at a joint venture with a not-for-profit, because we kind of neighbor each other in the land, like our land is right beside each other, rather than, each of us do our own thing. We're in talks to doing something together, which would be bigger.
Yeah.
So
how
would that work?
I can jump in on this quickly, because we've had a few situations with questions like this. So the issuer has to be the nonprofit. So the money that you're taking in as a community bond, it would have to be under the nonprofit's name. And the other thing is, the for-profit organization can't be flowing money into from the nonprofit the for-profit can only flow money into the nonprofit. So a lot of it depends on legal structure.
Okay.
Okay, perfect. So in the interest of time, if you have any other questions, let's park them till the end. Kyle has left his contact information just in case we need it. But in the interest of time, let's just jump into the breakout room. From my understanding, Marina and Kyle, you're going to be in two separate breakout rooms. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I will orchestrate the breakouts. Everybody will be broken into two groups pretty randomly. So I will start that now. Okay, are we back? Did everybody make it back? I don't see Alex. Oh, there we go. Okay, so now we're going to have a share back session from both breakout rooms. I'm not sure who's taking the lead in. Well, I know who's taking the lead in breakout room 2. So that is Alexandra. Do you want to go first and share?
Sure.
Oh, did I call you out? I didn't mean to. If you don't want to.
Oh, it's totally fine. It's totally fine. I guess I don't know if we can share a screen. I did not. I should have taken a screenshot of the list, but I didn't take
Oh,
a
I put it in the chat. I put it in the chat for
perfect.
for
Okay.
ease. Yeah.
Okay. So just want me to read the list, I guess, that we came up with. So we talked about members of the local community, local churches, other nonprofit organizations, local businesses and local business associations, corporations and institutions, political parties, CMHC, FCM, which I actually don't know what that stands for.
Federation of Canadian Municipalities.
Okay, thank you. And Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. And I think that was it.
I will share our Jam board and let Vanessa present it, and then we can look at what some of the major similarities and differences were. Okay, there you go.
Thanks. Hopefully everyone can hear me. So yeah, there was definitely some overlap when you're thinking about like faith-based groups and those regular sort of wonderful institutions we see within the community. So the environmental groups, the community garden food growers we had, so the unions, the pension funds, we love the pension funds who own my favorite sports teams. So the colleges, we're right by Humber College and also have like stakeholders at other universities and colleges too. So community health centers, LAMP is one of our biggest ones, Stonegate's right beside, just speaking from our locality. The healthcare workers, that would include those that are the social workers and respective agencies too. So developers, I know in community benefits work, we always look at the big picture people, but actually the private entities such as Dream, they also have kind of a big stake too. It makes them look good. It makes them have some, sets them apart. There's still really good ROI there too. So the municipal governments, we're lucky to have a good councillor and our MP and our MPP. So the provincial and federals, and then the other politicians. I know that I was at a meeting, so the school boards also we can maybe put down. I forgot the BIAs, that was a really good one too. And then foundations, that was come up with as well. And I think I have, the professors, the teachers. So the more we like work into it, the more we realize too, a lot of the small businesses that was discussed in the BIAs, but in the social trade. And so it's I would even say community policing. They're good stakeholders as well. Some of the policing in our area is actually very involved in the community, regardless of what stance we have on that. So yeah, there's a whole bunch that I think we came up with, and I'm sure the more we keep going, we'll come up with more.
Awesome, thank you.
Nice.
Yeah, so doing a lot of these stakeholder maps with our different clients, it's so interesting that both groups came up with churches or faith groups, because we do work with several organizations that are very supported by the faith community and by churches. Yeah, I see that breakout room 2 didn't come up with suppliers and tradespeople. That's one we always talk about during our workshops as one that people don't think of right away, but they are often huge supporters. So it's very okay. I didn't mean to come across like, oh, you didn't think of this. It's something that people like so often do not come up with, but they can be some of the biggest supporters. Kyle, did you have any comments?
No, I think I think there were well-rounded answers all around, and I think it's just this is an activity that you probably either thought through whether you're implementing a project because it's so critical, or if you've just done it now for the first time, it's really helpful to just think through and have everything kind of mapped out to see how all the pieces would come together for a successful campaign, and that's what we really try to do with you in those beginning stages when in terms of figuring out the feasibility of your project. So yeah.
Yeah, because the other thing is you might think you don't have a community, but once you do the stakeholder mapping, you realize, oh yeah, I have this plumber that comes and like works on our building, or this foundation that we get grants from, maybe they want to be an investor too. So I think that is all for our little activity there.
That was great. Honestly, thank you both. I really can see that, there's a lot of information that folks can use from here, and it's given folks a lot of things to think about. So they have your contact information. We will be sharing the presentation and the recordings. So yes, again, thank you both. That was great. Even I learned a lot from you both, so I really appreciate it. I'm going to share my screen quickly. We don't have much more, but we do have something very important, which is that survey. I always emphasize that because it's really, really important. So thank you everyone for sharing their time, insights, and expertise. And we look forward to seeing you at the next workshop. The next workshop is workshop number 3, and it's building relationships with key stakeholders, government, and developers. And that is on January 25th, in the new year. And we have our survey. The link will be provided for you in the chat. Please fill this out. It's really because we value diversity and strive to understand the varied backgrounds of our community. This information is collected for reporting purposes to ensure that we're reaching all communities. The response is voluntary, confidential, and be used solely for statistical analysis to improve our programs. So that will be shared for you in the chat. I think I also have I can put it up here in case you're on your cell phone. If you have your cell phone handy, you could scan this QR code, but the link should also be in the chat. In that event, I will leave the rest of the time for the survey and networking. Please feel free to use this time to reach out to others in the chat. I challenge you to make a connection with one new person or organization who you are not previously connected to. So I'll leave this time for networking, questions if we have any more questions for Kyle, Marina, or Hanya. And yeah, make a connection. Why not? We're stronger together. And I think that's been clear throughout the presentations today.
I feel like 8 p.m. is the new midnight. Doesn't it feel that way?
Yeah, it does. It does. Well, it's dark
I'm a
at
night owl.
2.
Well, I'm not an organization. Well, I have a nonprofit called Grant Resources. So, I mean, I don't know who the other organizations are who reach out or what they do. I'm just an individual trying to learn kind of thing.
No, I totally understand that, Sandra. If you don't feel like you there'd be any value in making that connection, that's okay too. If you're just here to learn, I totally appreciate that, and I really appreciate you coming. So that's totally fine.
I want to make a connection, but like, how do you make the connection? Like, do I just put my contact in the chat? Is that how it works? I guess that's the question.
Maybe everyone's got to do like a round of introductions or your name, what organization you're a part of, or what you're working on, and then
That's a great idea.
connect afterwards. Heather, you want to start?